Thank you.
I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm sitting here with my tea on this chilly, finally fall October morning in New York.
It's not cold in Israel, but it most definitely is an Israeli fall.
It's an Israeli fall.
It's cooler. It's nice at night, meaning at nice at night, it goes down into the 70s at
Mhm.
night.
It's really the best time. I love visiting Israel over Sukkot. The weather
It is.
can't be beat. I know this was quite late notice. We're so grateful to retired Colonel Mary Isaac for joining us. We all got the incredible news. We're watching those videos on Monday, and then for many of us, the holidays came in right after we learned the news. And so we wanted to get something together to share with the JCRC community, and we are thrilled to invite back our good friend, retired Colonel Mary Eisen, who's been just an incredible source of information for us over the past 2 years. And for those of you who don't know Mary, Mary has a deep background in the intelligence, security, and diplomacy world and is a frequent commentator on these issues in the world media. During her 20 years in the IDF, she served in a variety of positions, including the intelligence officer of a regional border brigade, the intel officer of the Israeli Airborne Division, and the assistant to the director of the military intelligence. And we were just speaking about reserve duty and how busy she's been these days as well. As a full colonel, she served as deputy head of the Combat Intelligence Corps. In all of her positions, she was the first woman to serve in such a capacity, which is really incredible. After retiring from the military, Miri served as the Israeli government spokesperson during the Second Lebanon War in 2006 and as international press secretary to Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. So thank you again for joining us today on really short notice. And let's start at 50,000 feet. Can you walk us through what transpired this past week with the release of the hostages, and how did this incredible moment come about after 2 long years of war?
So first of all, as I say, always after holiday Sameach in Israel, it's unofficially the after the holiday time, meaning yesterday, Wednesday, because we have that less day inside the Holy Land. And I say that because it's the first time in 2 years that you actually feel the relief. But I want to be very clear. There's no giddiness. It isn't this, like happiness. It isn't a sense that, oh, it's all over. But there's a sense of relief about the hostages because that was one of the points, and I'll talk about the other ones in a moment, that was such a sticking point and it so hurt. And especially the idea that with the 20 live hostages, that some would come back and some would not. And that expectation that 20 can come back, the live ones, we'll talk about the deceased hostages in a moment, that they came back. It's such a sense of relief. It's looking at the families, it's looking at the parents. And I'll remind everybody, the 20 that came back, some are young, all men, some are younger men that were taken in their military service. But the bulk of them were either from the Nova Party or they were what I'm going to call young men, but in their 20s and early 30s, husbands, fathers who were taken and held for 738 days in horrific conditions. So I'm just saying that there's that sense of relief. But I want to put this into a picture. It's a ceasefire. And in Israel, of all places, I think that we understand more. This is not the end of the war. It's not peace. It's a ceasefire. So there's an enormous sense of relief. Every single minute, it's looking at what are they telling us about the 20? It's not just the 20, it's the 20 and the released hostages from before. At the end, they took 258 hostages, and it's following now the ones that were released in November of 2023, the ones that were released in January, February of 2025. Noah Argamani, who was released in an operation in June of 2024. So there's these different ones that we kind of have all followed, and then it's following these stories. For all of us, it's about, the end of an era, and every single thing. I have to say that in Israel, Sarah, we're still not there. In what sense? So do you take down the stuff of the hostages? How can you? There are still 19 bodies held by Hamas, meaning when we talked about the 20 plus 28, and they gave back the 20 live ones, and until now, over the last few days, they've only given back 9 out of the 28 dead bodies, so we're at 19 right now, dead bodies that they still have, these are the same people. I wrote it down for myself because I want to remind people this isn't just, oh, it's 19 bodies. 7 of them were taken from kibbutz near Oz. We're talking about an 87-year-old man. We're talking about a 55-year-old man. They gave back the one body of the woman. There was one woman body that was held captive, but they haven't given that from kibbutz Be'eri, from kibbutz Alumin, from other kibbutzim that people may not know the name as much. Nir Yitzchak, it's like these are ones that were all attacked on October 7th. And not only were they attacked and taken live hostages, they were attacked and on the spot took dead hostages, and some of them were killed in captivity. So there's still 19 left. And because of that, inside Israel, so do you take down all of the different, this country is turned into a country of yellow chairs and yellow ribbons and of symbols and what we're not going to forget about the 19. So I say that it's relief, it's enormous, it's wonderful, and yet it's not over, and the 19 have not yet been given back. And all of that, more is coming out now on the price that we paid. So again, in this last week, 20 live hostages came back and oh my God, okay, again, not euphoria, but relief, and it's just a wonderful sense. The 19 that have not come back, but we released to get them back 1,700 Gazan detainees that are not the ones that committed the October 7th atrocities. Those were not released, okay? But we released 1,700 Gaza combatants that we had detained from the war onward, meaning it would be from, let's say, the end of October 2023 when we started operations in the Gaza Strip. That's 1,700. And in addition to them, 268 from Israeli jails that are different terrorists that were arrested, put on trial, and given life sentences. And out of them is a large portion of what in Israel we called with blood on their hands. And here I want to share, and perhaps that's also part, that sense of relief and why it's tapered. I need us to understand that. I don't know if you've ever hosted at the JCRC in New York a woman called Kay Wilson. She's a lovely Jewish woman from Scotland that made Aliyah over 25 years ago. And over 20 years ago, she was attacked. She's a tour guide. She was attacked, and her tourist was killed. And 38 bones in her body were broken by the man who attacked her with an axe and the person she was going with. And the man that was afterwards, the terrorist who was arrested, put on trial and given life sentences. There were 2 of them. They were released last week. And Tal, her name is Kay Wilson, but she calls herself Tal Helatuv now. And Tal wrote a post and she said, what am I supposed to feel like? Okay. She has 38 broken bones in her body. She was in the hospital for over 9 months. She's in constant care. Okay. It's almost 20 years ago, and he was let out. I'm just giving you one example of those that were let out from attacks that were done in the 1990s and in the 2000 in the Second Intifada and after that. And so, yes, all of this happened in the last few days during the Hag.
Thank you for reminding us all that this is, yes, a moment of joy, and that I don't know if the word unmitigated is the correct adjective to include to that joy. There's a lot of factors that I'd love to talk about a little bit, but to understand how we got to this moment, can you tell us maybe there's no clear answer, but how come it worked out this time? We've had other ceasefires with other hostage release. We've never had Hamas commit to release all the living hostages. What was different this time? What changed the calculation?
So first of all, time does its own. And Sarah, it's really important to say to everybody listening to us right now, depending on where you stand, and breathe in deep, I'm going to say the word politically, the way you view the world, you'll probably give more emphasis to the different reasons, because it's a variety of reasons. I mean, I'm going to say in my kooky way, the planets aligned and happen now. But at the end, it's that sense that it could happen now, meaning Israel as a country, and certainly the government of Israel, felt that it was putting real pressure on Hamas, and that because of that, Hamas agreed to do it. And there are those going to be saying they could have done it a year ago. And I'm going to say maybe, but we don't know that. Now, for the government of Israel, it was about putting pressure on Hamas. But putting pressure on Hamas was of several different levels. It was the Israeli military. Okay, that was our ground operation that we continued with all of the heartbreak that that gives to all of us when we think of what that did inside the Gaza Strip. When Israel did that ground operation, it was very clear where they thought the live hostages were, and those were areas where you were not allowed to attack. And those 20 hostages came back alive. Not talking right now about, because part of what Hamas is saying is that they can't find the dead bodies now. Yeah, that's what Hamas says. I don't actually believe them. To me, it's part of their pressure, but I'm saying that because we put pressure on them, and that was very direct. In addition, for the first time, as far as I'm concerned, both Qatar, that has a lot of influence, and Turkey, that has influence, said to Hamas to take the deal. Why did Qatar and Turkey this time tell Hamas, do it? Because at the end, I think, and again, this is my opinion, and there are lots of other opinions, that in its own way, I don't even know how to call our Israeli government and all of the words that we could talk about it, but the perception that this Israeli government, not necessarily the Israeli people, are willing to do anything, and it's a horrible thing to say, okay? But that sense was get the 20 out, stop this. Okay, you guys can stop this now. You're not going to get more. It's only going to get worse for you, meaning for Israel to reoccupy all of the Gaza Strip, what we did not do once we left it in 2005, and we didn't even do it throughout this war, that's a worse result for Hamas than giving back the 20 alive, having Israel realign, because in addition to releasing the detainees and prisoners that we released as part of this agreement, Israeli troops also realigned still inside the Gaza Strip, but realigned outside of the heart of the big cities, the heart of Gaza City and the heart of Han Yunis. I mean, we've realigned. So when you say what was different this time, the length of time, the battering that Israel did, the fact that Hamas did not think that it was going to get the backing of its backers unless they took a step. And last but not least, and everybody breathe in deep, I know it's not going to be popular, is that same kind of aspect where Israel, the Israeli government now is perceived as willing to do anything. I don't think anybody really knows how to predict what President Trump will do or not do. And so the ultimatum that came out of the United States, which impacts Turkey and impacts Qatar and impacts Egypt, it's not just us, everybody's looking at what it did to us, also brought them more to the table. So I'm giving you a combination of different ideas. I don't know which one is the correct one. Okay. It's kind of funny in that sense. We always look for the one. It's because of that. And a lot of people are going to then argue with me and say, but if you did it now, why didn't you do it a year ago? And I'm going to say, and this is just me, Mary, and I'm not exactly representative, not of the government and not of the anti-government. Okay, I'm representative of a broad aspect of the security establishment. We're now in October of 2025. In October of 2024, we were in a direct confrontation with Hezbollah, which to me, as a military person, was incredibly important. Don't forget that this war is not just the hostages in the Gaza Strip. It's Hezbollah that joined in from day one. It's the other actors, I call them in terror organizations, what was happening from Iran, from Syria, where Iran was so heavy. All of these things only changed in the last year. And so all of these changes, Israel against Hezbollah, what changed inside Syria as a result of Israel against Hezbollah, that change in Syria, which brought about also the Israeli operation with US against Iran. I'm reminding people all of these together are what could bring it about right now. So it's a lot of different elements together.
We could do a whole nother, maybe we will one day, do a whole nother webinar about Syria. I mean, I'm so fascinated about what is going on there. I know David Horowitz from the Times of Israel went to Syria as an Israeli. But putting that for our next conversation, um, reports indicate that the freed hostages endured, we know the severe torture, starvation, prolonged isolation. Some were held alone for 2 years or nearly 2 years. What can you tell us about their physical and psychological condition, and what long-term challenges does Israel anticipate for those who've returned?
So there's different levels of what's going on here. And in that sense, I'm going to say that it's one of the things I'm most proud in the state of Israel is the way that even though it wasn't immediate, but both civil society and the governmental and the hospitals and all of the different, everybody is on board for what do you do with people who have been both in the situation of the hostages, but it's not just the hostages, Sarah. It's the hostages' families. It's not, just think right now of one person who's 20 something and how many people they know and know personally, the people who were at the Nova party, who saw what happened there. And I say very sadly, on October 7th, you had additional suicides of people from the Nova Party 2 years after the Nova Party, meaning this isn't something that's just about the 20 hostages getting out right now. It's about Israeli society and the hostages and the hostage families and anybody who was exposed to what they saw on October 7th were going through it. Specifically about the 20. There was the 20 that were released on October, God, I've lost my sense of time, on Erev Chag Shani, as I would say inside Israel, in the morning of Erev Chag Shani, in two different pimot. Oh my God, my Hebrew's gonna in two different, because they were sent out in two different loads, if I can call it that. What a horrible name, but yay in their home. Is that first physically, none of them are in any kind of situation where there's fear for their existence, meaning all 20 came back heavily underweight, heavily starvation, but they were young enough, strong enough, and even those that were injured there, that's okay. The way that it's taken care of here is that they were all brought into what I'm going to call cocoons. The Israeli military, hospital, Ministry of Health, because it's all sorts of elements that work together, build for each one of the 20 hostages what is basically a cocoon inside the hospital. It's a home inside the hospital because they need to be there for an extensive period of time. I'm going to give the worst possible examples, and I apologize upfront to the audience, okay? But when somebody has been starved for 2 years, and this is very similar to what happened to Holocaust survivors, okay? And it's not as bad as the Holocaust survivors. It was 2 years. Oh my God, which is impossible to think of. I'm just saying, okay, because there are that comparison is out there. But by starving them, your body doesn't just, you get out and now what you really want to do is have that steak that you remember from October 6th. And it's the worst thing that can happen to your body. You have to be under very strict health conditions to make sure that you slowly grow back the fat, the muscle. There was one young man, Noah Argamani's partner, okay, Avinatan, who was alone for 2 years and not outside. Those are two different psychological and medical aspects, okay? He was alone for 2 years. How do you address the fact that he was alone for 2 years? You're inside your head for 2 years. He never met any of the other hostages. He didn't have that kind of exposure to know what was going on. So you have to address that in a different way. That's one aspect. But the other one is that he wasn't out in the sun. There were several of them that were held for the entire 2 years and not allowed out into the sun. That's there's a condition like that. That's a health condition. We need, what's it called? Vitamin, whatever, whatever. We'll each remember it in a moment because we
Vitamin
all know
D.
we
Yeah.
put on, right? Okay. Because we put on sunscreen, right? But the other thing is that we actually need that exposure also to the sun. So it's taking it at a time, and each one of them, and this is true of these 20, it's true of the women and men who were let out in the release at the beginning of the year, January, February. There's some of them that are more out there now, Emily Damari and Romy. These are different young women that they've been in and out of hospital because their fingers were broken. There are all sorts of things that you have to take care of, but you don't do that immediately if they were, because all of them have broken bones, but you don't take it that immediately. It's like you slowly build the body back. And I gave that very detailed description because it's true for the people who got out in November of 2023. Okay, we're almost in November of 2025. That first group was only in captivity for 2 months, and yet they also still have residue that's staying with them for a very long time, let alone those who were just in captivity for 738 days.
Yeah. Um, you watching the videos, you see all the positive parts, but that's the beginning, and that's the joy, and then the very, very long road ahead of them. And this is something that you touched upon in your first answer to me, but as you said, Hamas has only returned 9 of the 28 bodies of deceased hostages, and there's still 19 bodies in Gaza, despite that their return was part of the ceasefire agreement. So what can you share about what the Israeli government or the IDF is doing to locate and recover these remains? How is Hamas justifying its failure to return them? And what does this violation mean for this phase 2 of the ceasefire that President Trump has been speaking about?
So we're in phase one. This is supposed to be part of phase one. And so in that sense, it's the question. So they're not fulfilling phase one. And the first thing that they're saying is, it's not our fault. This is what Hamas says. It's not our fault. It's the Israelis. Not the Israelis as in that we're attacking right now, but it's those Israelis who destroyed everything and we don't know where the bodies are. So I'm going to say the following. One, I think they know where most of the bodies are. I absolutely think that it's possible that they don't know where all the bodies are. Second thing is that Israel and the Israeli military, from October 7th, there have been special teams, special units, special intel that is, and not just Israeli, by the way. There's also other international intel, certainly the United States, and in that sense, I would say Great Britain and other ones that have capabilities that all of us have always been focused aside from, you know, trying to demote and demolish Hamas is constantly to look at where the hostages are, and as I said, the live ones, and never attacking the place where the live ones were. There's a, in that sense, that was a very positive aspect of the intel of knowing how to do that, but also of following whatever Hamas was doing with the dead hostages from the beginning. There was a whole team that's doing so. It still completely exists. It's going to be much stronger right now, meaning I think that Israel, in that sense, part of the fact that Israel is because what Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar have said is, oh, let us send in our teams to help clear out the areas that Hamas says need to be cleared out to be able to find the bodies. And Israel is saying, thank you very much. We don't want Turkey in there. We don't want Qatar in there. With Egypt, it's a different story. I'll get to that in a moment, but we don't want them suddenly coming in now with, let alone troops. Okay. It's like that they're going to come in there and they're not going to be helping to find those bodies. I want to open for a moment parenthesis just so that people understand. From the 1973 war, Sarah, there are 7 Israeli soldiers that were missing in action in the United States of America from just from World War II, let alone from Korea and afterwards, especially from Vietnam. You have tens of thousands of missing in action. Okay. We have 7 from the 1973 war in Egypt, where Israel throughout the years had a pretty good idea, but because we bring everybody home for burial. And Egypt has never cooperated on that. So Egypt coming in to help Hamas to find these bodies, a Goisa Metzia, I don't see that as something that's going to really be helpful. So what Israel is trying to do right now is to pressure Egypt, Turkey, Qatar to make Hamas give back the bodies that are there. And I think that the additional aspect that may happen will be, I don't want to say intervention because it's not about Israel. It's about finding whatever that body is that we can, very difficult. May have to be US, I don't really know to say otherwise, where we have information of where they are to have somebody go there and look at the places that we're specifically going to be saying, but we don't want to give that information, not to Turkey, not to Qatar, not to Egypt, and not to Hamas. So, because if we have that information, that means that Hamas knows. So it's to pressure Hamas into really bringing them back. And again, out of the 19 bodies that are left, I am sure that there are some that are in areas that, let's say, were bombed, and so you don't know as well. But there's a difference between that and saying, oh, all 19, we can't find any of them anymore. I want to say for myself, on a very personal level, that, and it's not fair because there's an amazing colonel, brigade commander, that they snatched his body when they killed him, and everybody at the beginning thought he was alive and kidnapped, and that would have been like their biggest. And they took his body, and they know what that body means. They didn't lose that body. Okay, I want to be very clear. There's a body. You know, we talk about the 19 as if it's October 7th, but they have a body of Hadar Goldin who's been there from July, well, it's really August of 2014. They've been holding a body of an Israeli soldier. There were 2 of them, but one of them we recovered. And his body has been there for the last 11 years. So this is Hamas. They hold the bodies and they play. Don't think that, oh, it's because what Israel did.
Yeah, and I want to thank you specifically for mentioning Hadar Golden. I was going to bring him up as well because I think that most people probably don't know that when they see the picture of the hostages, there's one remaining person who's been there for 11 years, whose family has been just incredibly tirelessly fighting for his return, separate from what happened on October 7th. So please, so thank you for reminding us all about that. And you said very briefly, we're still in phase 1. We're not at phase 2, but
Yeah.
phase 2 requires Hamas's demobilization, demilitarization, de-radicalization. We are seeing right now that Hamas is killing their own people, uh,
Executing them, Sarah.
executing their own people on the streets. So, well, how realistic are President Trump's goals for phase two?
So first of all, I want the goals to be out there. I want us always to remember them. Okay. So you asked about being realistic, and I'm like, if you don't put the goals out there, they can't happen. Okay. If you say they're not realistic, so I'm not going to put them as goals, they're never going to happen. I think that every single one of us certainly wants them to be disarmed. And we have the exact same challenge when it comes to Hezbollah in Lebanon, different arena, but that same challenge. Who disarms Hezbollah? Who disarms Hamas? When it comes to the ruling, because it's what they say is that they need to be demobilized, is the fact that they can't run the Gaza Strip. Second thing is that they can't bear arms. But then who runs the Gaza Strip and bears arms as the police, because at the end, you don't want it to be chaotic. And I'm putting the de-radicalize on the side because, Sarah, I want you to de-radicalize campuses in the United States, see how well you do there, and then we can talk about how easy it is to de-radicalize Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Okay, and that was me being very sarcastic, and I apologize, it's not fair, but it
Fair
is
enough.
Thursday night in Israel. I'm allowed a little bit of sarcasm because the de-radicalization is so important, but it's something that you can't do until there's a stabilization. So as I say, I like the goal. I like that goal that it should be stable. For it to be stable from Israel and the United States, and I would say from the EU, and what's amazing is from the Arab countries. All of them are saying Hamas, you can't rule. I remind everybody, Hamas took over the Gaza Strip from the Palestinian Authority in June 2007 and have ruled there from June 2007. Israel has not been in the Gaza Strip since the summer of 2005 and until we came back in the aftermath of this war in 2023. So I'm just putting that out there because I want those steps to happen. How realistic they are, they're as realistic as I think in its own way. Everybody expects Israel, I'll say otherwise. The Israeli public want this to happen. The polls in Israel very clearly say we needed the hostages back, but we understand that that's not the only goal of the war. And in that, I think we're different from the rest of the world. I mean, it's like everybody thought it was all about the hostages. Of course, it's about the hostages, it's human beings. It's also about Hamas not ruling there, not being armed there. As I said, de radicalization, we'll take it one step at a time. And the question is who can implement that? And that's the big question about phase two, because that's the stage you're only supposed to start talking about how you do that and implement that after we get back the 19 bodies. And after that happens, by the way, we're supposed to redeploy again. We redeployed a bit, which was to get back the live hostages. That was the first redeployment that we did. And only after that, they brought back the live hostages. And they're supposed to get back the dead hostages. And then we redeploy again, still inside the Gaza Strip. And then we're supposed to talk about that. And it won't happen. And that's a limbo, which to me is worse for the Gazans than anybody else. Okay. I'm totally against Hamas, and I don't want 2 million people in the Gaza Strip to be suffering the way they are. They support Hamas, that's a problem, but I'm going to say they don't really have choice. And there's an aspect here because until we get back to 19, Hamas are holding that as collateral. So I don't know how realistic it is. I'm waiting to see what they do with the bodies if they give back another two and then another two. I mean, again, they're trickling it because they're trying to prolong it. But I think that the United States' pressure, Israel being seen as being a maverick in a very negative way. And I think that Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey is the ones who can impact Hamas, do have the capability to do so. The challenge is going to be who's instead. That's the challenge.
Actually, I want to jump off of what you were just talking about with Qatar and Egypt and Saudi Arabia. How does Israel view the role of all of these regional actors in implementing and guaranteeing a future where there is some sort of peace in the region?
So let's be very clear. Israel views the different actors in vastly different ways. We share a border with Egypt. We have a strategic peace treaty with Egypt. Everybody, we have a strategic peace treaty with Egypt. It's strategic for Israel. It's strategic for Egypt. For Egypt, there have been a lot of misinformation, disinformation that Egypt does not want to attack us. Egypt does not like Hamas. Egypt has 110 million people that they need to deal with. And it isn't that they're saying, let's take the 110 million to attack Israel, that will resolve any of the problems in Egypt. They actually don't think so because there's been a lot of misinformation about that. So when it comes to Egypt, Israel has a security relation. We have an open dialogue with them, which is security, which has been around for over 40 years. That doesn't make it perfect, good, or lovely, but it is way better than being in a state of war. So we view Egypt as an important player. They share a border with the Gaza Strip. That was one of the big issues in this specific war. When Israel left all of the Gaza Strip in 2005, one of the reasons at the time the chief of staff resigned was because the government at the time decided to leave the Egyptian Gazan border. We were sitting on it. We said, we're leaving the Gaza Strip and we're going to let them have an open border with Egypt. It'll be Egypt and the Gaza Strip, not an open border there. And that continues to be, because we're sitting now on that border. That's one of the places that we have not left, and we were supposed to leave at the end of phase one. We'll see if that happens. And so Egypt is one. Qatar is vastly different. Qatar funds the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide. Qatar funds radicalization. If we were talking about the de-radicalization, we could look at Qatar and what Qatar funds. If it's inside the Arab states, to be clear, this is something that's an Arab issue. It's a Muslim issue. It exists also in campuses around the world. And again, I'm putting that aside. Qatar has a lot of money. They use both Al Jazeera Arabic, which has immense impact worldwide, and Al Jazeera English, and just a building of narratives. And so Israel is very contested with that. What happened after Israel attacked the Hamas leadership in Qatar over a month ago? By the way, I didn't mention that before. And most definitely, that was also like, with all of the oomph of everything else happening together, that also pushed Israel into a place where it could be pressured to be able to bring about the exchange that happened over this last week. And I didn't mention that before, and it's important. Turkey. So I want to give you the oddest thing, okay? We still have diplomatic ties with Turkey. When you drive in Tel Aviv on Rehov Yarkon, opposite the Hilton Hotel, there is still a Turkish embassy. The Turkish embassy still has a Turkish flag. There's no ambassador here. I think that they have like a few people who, because it's been such a testy relationship, I'm being nice about it. Turkey hosts Hamas's leadership. Qatar hosts Hamas's leadership. They back Hamas. What does that do to the other Palestinians, to Palestinians who are not Hamas? Both the Palestinian authorities and others, okay? It's like, because that backing of Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood type entity. So what Israel is trying to do right now is quietly, absolutely continue a basic relationship with Egypt. It's very important long term. Qatar is right now, I don't know what the right word is. There's a huge American US base, Air Force base, and other ones inside Qatar. Turkey is a member of NATO. So in that complex relationship, it's like, how do you play in between them? Okay. I think Israel would like to bring in other Muslim/Arabic countries, more United Arab Emirates, who have been very active in de-radicalization. Saudi Arabia, that I breathe in deep because I'm not a real big fan, but they have absolutely been trying perhaps to do some de-radicalization, because that's important at that level, that you can see countries that are doing so. It gives potential. Big Muslim countries that are not as involved now and could have a better impact. A country that most people have not heard of, Azerbaijan, which is a Muslim country that both borders Iran. It was part of the Soviet Union once upon a time from 1990-91. It's independent. It's a Muslim secular country, strong leadership in that sense. No, they're not a democracy, don't worry, but that's not what I'm asking for here. But the Azeris, maybe something different, which came up over the last week, like Indonesia, which is the most populated Muslim country in the world. It's not radically anti-Israel the way a lot of other Muslim countries are. So I'm just giving you a lot of options. It's not just Turkey, Qatar, Egypt. Egypt is obvious. Turkey and Qatar are both very involved. Turkey is the one that's been backing and helping the different flotillas also, but put that one again on the side. But let's bring in additional players, and all of them could be future impacts inside the Gaza Strip, and for that matter, also in the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, but give it time.
Thank you. Yeah, it's incredible. I know President Trump was speaking and he was talking about the expansion of the Abraham Accords, and to think that this could be a jumping off moment, maybe for additional regional cooperation, is one of the more hopeful things to emerge. I have a couple more questions. I just want to remind everyone who's joining us, if you have a question for Miri, please put it in the Q&A box and we'll try to get to some of those. Looking back inside Israel, we know very well that far-right ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich have opposed any kind of deal over the past 2 years. I think that they differed a little bit on this most recent one, but they have threatened to bring down the government if Hamas isn't dismantled at the end of a process. How stable is Netanyahu's coalition, and what kind of domestic political pressure is he calculating as he moves forward during this peace process?
It's like the questions that I know how to answer, and with a lot of, secure, that I understand what I'm talking about. And then I get to the one where, okay, I'm going to step in, but I'm going to do so gently. Politics are both domestic, and Israeli politics get an international platform. I want to remind everybody that, okay? Because our politics at the end, I'm going to say, in a similar way to other democracies in the world, there are those that are more conservative in their positions and those that are more progressive in their positions. And most people who are progressive think that conservatives are just, old fuddy-duddies. And most people who are conservative think that progressives go way too far all of the time. Okay, I'm saying that because it's a problem, a challenge. Democracy is messy and challenging, and you have very differing voices. And I look for a moment not at the United States. Each can look at their own backyard. Look at Canada, look at the UK, look at France, look at Italy, look at Germany, and the different voices that are very different voices now that we like to call them right or left or conservative and progressive and anti-immigration or for immigration. I say that we have that exact same thing inside Israel, only it's by Jews, well, the bulk of society, and there's the Arab minority. And it's funny because we also call the ultra-Orthodox Jews a minority. It's about being more conservative or more progressive. It's about a lot of different issues. And Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, in that sense, represent conservative views about legislation and different ideas, both of, equality and democracy. And I say that again because I hear these voices in all democracies around the world right now. And in addition to that, add into it a position that they present very openly of Jewish messianic views, which you can agree or disagree with, but they are views, and they bring them to the table as part of the political agenda. And again, I have everybody swallowing deep. Religion is not something unique to the Jewish state of Israel. And we're a state that has it's all secular laws. We're a Jewish state because we're a Jewish majority, and we just close down the country for the 3 weeks of the holidays, which is nice because we don't close down from December 25th through January whatever, because those are not holidays in Israel, because each country to their own holidays. And I know I'm blabbering, and I'm saying all of that because I would say that 2 weeks ago, one of the additional reasons that I'm going to add to the table of why the agreement happened now and not another position is that I think that the Israeli public needed the hostages back, and that the prime minister understood that was part of a political domestic basis. You have to deliver to your base, and his base was already just needing that, and it brought a surge in the support for Prime Minister Netanyahu's party in a way that he hasn't seen in the last 2 years by doing this. Not to Smotrich and not to Ben-Gvir. Okay, it did bring it to Prime Minister Netanyahu's party, meaning at the end, the bulk of people are not going to what I would call the more extreme voices. And again, each of us view it in a different way, but at the end, it's a political spectrum. So right now, his government is very stable because, and now I'm going to be slightly cynical if I'm allowed to, Ben-Gvir has said Ben-Gvir left the government and then came back in. Smotrich left the government and came back in. Both Shas and Yadut HaTorah, the two ultra-Orthodox parties, are not in the government right now. They're supporting it from the outside. If you go into our whole system, which is so different from yours, right now is on a very narrow aspect. But they're all right now feeling that they've gotten past the worst of it. Elections in Israel are supposed to be in November of 2026. There's the possibility that's over a year from now. And I think that in that sense, what we're saying is that the governing party felt strong enough in the polls, strong enough. Yes, it has to do also with that, because that's how decisions are made. And everyone's like, oh my God, it wasn't on the higher moral ground of just letting out the hostages. No, it's always a combination of geopolitics and domestic politics and how what your base is. That it is at the end, Hamas are bad guys. Okay, this isn't about playing around. And I think that it's very stable. And I do think, and I'm saying this to all of you as my only prediction, is that within a week or two, and again, it depends on what happens with the 19 bodies, we will start seeing in Israel protests again that are going to be much more clear cut against the government. But you should all know that the government has the support of at least half of the population. And so it's always, so which half are you on? Where you only see the ones who are against, or you only see the ones who are with, because they're very, very different.
Thank
Was that
you.
too long?
No, it's really complicated, and I appreciate your nuanced approach. I think that it is very easy from whatever news source you're hearing your news for to say that Bibi is strong or Bibi is about to lose his coalition. And as you said, just like here, it's very complicated. And his party, the Likud party, their numbers have gone up since the peace process has begun, or since the ceasefire has begun. And
Thanks,
they're
Sarah. I don't like calling it a peace
yes,
process.
yes, I corrected myself since the ceasefire has begun. And also the question is, what are the other options? I think that us in New York, that's been a question that a lot of people have been asking as well as we have an election coming up. What are the choices that exist here? I want to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to move to questions from our audience. And it's take this in whatever direction you want to take it. After 2 years of war, what are the key lessons that Israel has learned?
It's the hardest question to say. And the reason it's hard for me to answer is because I'm only thinking about it now. Meaning, that relief that I talked about way at the beginning of this conversation that we feel with the 20 live hostages being back. We don't have any live hostages, tfu, 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 knock on wood as I do in my Jewish, non-Jewish way, right? Uh, is just, it's giving us the sense that, okay, now what do we look about? I think that what Israel has learned is that our civic society is incredibly strong, incredibly strong. This is not something simple to learn in 2025, that you learn that even when the government does not know how to take care of things, Israeli civic society knows how to do things. And that's an amazing thing to be able to say about a strong, vibrant democracy. And that's a lesson. It's a lesson that you learned how civic society knows how to organize itself, what it knows how to do out to help its own others and how it looks at it. And the second thing is that we're still very divided. And I'm saying it not as a lesson, I'm saying it as a prediction in that sense, meaning we have vastly different approaches on how we see our country and our future. We have lots of things in common, but there are also things that are very divisive. And again, I say it more similar to conservative, progressive, but here it also has to do with the conflict and the future both of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, not so much the Gaza Strip. The voices that you hear, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, that talk about going back and reestablishing communities in the Gaza Strip are very fringe in Israel, but they get a very large voice outside of Israel. In Israel, everybody kind of laughs at that and ignores it. By the way, those same voices have also talked about establishing Israeli communities both in Lebanon and in Syria. It's like, yeah, okay, so here we are. That's not the bulk of Israelis at all. I mean, it's not 98% of Israelis. And so I think that that lesson of a strong civic society, the fact that the security establishment is vulnerable. And when I say vulnerable, October 7th has not yet been really faced in Israel. We've been in a war. And the implications of what that means, this is in that sense, it's like they've changed since then. The chief of staff, the head of the intelligence, the head of what is the Israeli Domestic Security Agency, they've changed all of these principles, all of the positions, and yet things have not changed dramatically. So there's a whole question inside Israel of how do we look forward into the challenges that are here? And the last lesson I'm going to say is that I don't know if I'm saying this is a good lesson or a bad lesson, but I think that the bulk of Israelis, including myself, okay, learned is that we have a very effective, strong military capability. effective and strong. That doesn't make it lovely and beautiful. War is never lovely and beautiful. But that military capability failed on October 7th, or I should say, in that run up and on October 7th, and then came back and showed its capability, does not go hand in hand with an Israeli capability of diplomacy. And diplomacy is something that we are not good at. And I'm not sure where that's going to go. I'm not sure I'm comfortable inside a country right now where, as an Israeli, it's hard for me to go anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. I think I can tell you the exact countries where I'll go to, and I won't be worried about my Jewishness, about Jewish symbols. And I say Jewish and Jewish symbols, let alone saying, hi, I'm from Israel. What, I have to hide I'm from Israel? How can I hide? And I say that because that is a key lesson has been how quickly you can win a war militarily and lose your legitimacy worldwide. And I don't think it's a new lesson, but I think it became much more extreme in this war.
The fact that the government has not had an English language spokesperson for most of the war, I think, Mary, I don't know if you're available, but they could definitely benefit from.
Hey, they brought in Shosh. I mean, it must be 2 weeks ago. How long has Shosh Biederman been there? And I've worked with Shosh extensively. She's been in the news and she's been doing as an anchor. And I was like, why couldn't they have done this, 2 years ago? What's the problem? And yes, that's part of the aspect. It has to do with politics and domestic politics and who you're talking to and who you think is important. And it's very challenging, very
Thank,
challenging.
thank you so much. I want to move now to questions from our audience. Michael Rothman asks, what is the proposed time frame for phase two?
So it's a great question, Michael. And the issue is that nobody ever put a timeline on phase two. And all of phase two at this stage is basically kind of 3 lines that were agreed to, which, as we said before, are about the disarmament, about the demobilizing, about the de-radicalization, and about the future of who will run the Gaza Strip. I mean, it's such a big sentence and it has not been detailed. Having said that, there are very detailed proposals on the table, both by Israel and by international, not bad, okay, but different international entities. Doesn't matter if it's Tony Blair, who was said would be the appointee on behalf of both the EU and others, that he would be the one that would be there to run, because at the end you have to have money, but mainly you have to decide on who is going to be the entity that runs it. And here, in that sense, I think that that proposed time frame is the implementation of phase two will have very much to do with what they decide on who gets to run it. Assuming that it is Palestinians, are they from the Gaza Strip, or is that impossible? Are they from Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, or is that impossible? If it's not here and not there, who is it? If it's not Palestinians, will it work? And I say all of that because you say the proposed time frame for phase two is to implement that, and nobody has yet talked in a clear-cut way, sorry, about who it will actually be. And in any of the proposals, they talk, sorry, that cold is coming up. In any of the proposals that are the proposals for the proposed time frame, because they're different from each other, all of them talk about bringing in some kind of either Arab or Muslim force. And over the last few days, they've said Indonesia is saying that they're willing to send. Okay. Pakistan wants to send. We don't have diplomatic ties, not with Indonesia, not Pakistan, but Pakistan has been vehemently anti-Israel. Oh my God. It's like, talk about the rhetoric there. Not that it's great in any of these countries. So don't know. That would be the way that I would sense that. And we're not there yet. I do think that there are teams on the ground that are talking, even though we're not there yet. But nobody's going to give more detail than what I said until we've gotten past the stage that Israel says that we're past phase one.
Thank you. Mark Wolf asks, what do you make of all the folks in the US who are condemning Israel for genocide and who are silent now while Hamas executes Gazans who oppose them? And I'll add to that, who are silent now that there is a ceasefire and don't necessarily seem to be celebrating it.
Don't we all? I mean, it's like the answer is in the question. I think exactly like you do for all of those who think of that question. It's not about the ceasefire. It's not about the killing at all. It's about Israel being wrong. And then you realize the double-edged sword here, and that's fact. It's the same kind of people are like, they'll never accept, not the Netanyahu government. I'm saying that also inside Israel in that sense. Okay, it's like, it's anything that Bibi does has to be bad. There are those that it doesn't matter how it's done. If he did the ceasefire now, he could have done it a year ago. And I live inside my country and I say, okay. But that goes on the other side, on your side of the ocean, which means that if Trump did it, it's bad, right? And I'm going, they brought about a ceasefire. There is a ceasefire right now, a real ceasefire. They brought about bringing back not just our 20 hostages, but that was an exchange, which makes it hard for me because I don't like exchanges with terrorists. And it's like, no, it's like, how can you do that equivalence? That equivalence was done from the beginning. It's the same people that not only legitimized Hamas, delegitimized Israel, and they can't view it through any other lenses.
I think we have time for maybe two more questions. Let's go to Mindy Stein. Please talk about the continued challenge of Iran and the fact that Iran is rebuilding already with China's help. And she says, can we afford to wait until President Trump is out of office to deal with Iran?
It's a fascinating question, Mindy. I don't have answers for everything. I can say the following. We focus on Iran and on the nuclear, and that's fine. I want to focus on that there. Iran is a country of over 90 million people. Ali Khamenei is 86 years old. I have great respect for older people. My mom's 87 years old. Having said that, okay, don't know how much longer he's going to be around. And Iran is in a change. So we need to follow it, but we need to be aware of the fact that there is going to be a big change within the next few years inside Iran, because I don't know if it's going to be another Ayatollah, but that's not Ali Khamenei. He was the first guy who came after Khomeini. So what's happening in Iran right now is under Ali Khamenei. And I'm looking just like the Palestinian Authority under Mahmoud Abbas, who is already 89 years old, and he has been in his 5-year presidency for the last 20 years, okay? And it's made the Palestinian Authority corrupt and bad, and everybody looks at it in such a negative way. Ali Khamenei from 1985, okay? That's like 40 years. And there's a big question on what will happen in Iran after. So it's not just about Trump or about China or about US or the EU. It's also about what's domestically going to be happening in Iran. And I think we're going to be looking at that. And in the meantime, I think Israel, of all of the things throughout these 2 years of war, showed the capabilities when it came to Hezbollah and the capabilities when it came to Iran in the depth of our understanding, intelligence gathering, and operational capability that didn't disappear at the end of June after those attacks. And so, yes, they may be rebuilding, but yes, we do too. So in that sense, we'll continue to be there as the ones that are the only ones who are directly threatened by the Iranians of an attack, of annihilation.
Let's take this last question. What do you hear about Israeli leaders also being aware of the impact of the war on the Jewish community in the diaspora? For example, the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of violent acts against Jews throughout the world. And what are you hearing about the relationship between Israel and diaspora Jews?
Thank you for this last question. So I don't consider myself a diaspora Jew. I mean, I'm very Israeli, right? But I'll remind all of our listeners that I was born in the United States of America. My parents chose to move to Israel. I've lived here for over 54 years, and I have all of my relatives are in the United States of America. My parents moved, everybody else, cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody's in the States.
You're the opposite of me.
Okay, see, it's
I've got everyone in
two different
Israel
ways.
here in New
Two
York.
different ways, okay? And I say that because I don't think that the Israeli government, or the Israeli people for that matter, understand diaspora Jews, and it's not just the United States. But I would say that that's something that we always need to invest in more, that it's a two-way street. It's not you to us or us to you. It's both in meeting somewhere. And I absolutely think that we understand that there's an impact on diaspora Jews. I have to say that I think that until October 7th and what happened, and I'm saying you're New York, NYU, Columbia, I mean, in campuses mainly, not only, not all of them, and not all over the place, but I'm saying in that sense, or the city of New York, from then, is something that we need to learn and understand because for me, it was always like the United States is another safe haven. And I still think of the United States as a safe haven, but not in the way that I did before October 7th. I'm uncomfortable in the United States, and I was born in the United States in a way that I never was before. And I think that there are ministers in the Israeli government who have zilch, zero, no understanding of what being a Jew and a Jew in the diaspora. I think that Israelis in general have this, oh yes, be strong. I'm always like, this isn't about that you can have lots of different identities, and being a strong, positive American Jew, Jewish American, American Jew, Canadian Jew, and just because it's not just the US diaspora, but it's by far the largest. These are things that I don't think we understand as good as we don't. And I want us to invest more in that. I want to say that I know a few of the people who work in those different offices, and I hope that it'll change. I want to say, sadly, it also becomes at the end part of the politics in Israel, religiosity. I remind you of those two ultra-Orthodox parties that have a lot of impact inside Israel. And the ultra-Orthodox have lots of interesting ideas when it comes to Jewishness and religiosity, and it impacts Israeli politics. And I'm going to hope that we know how to change that one. I want to remind us all, we're all Jews well, not all Jews. We're JCRC, and we can be Jews and non-Jews. We're human beings and we're people. That Israel is a country and a democracy, and we have our many warts, pimples, and woes. And we need to understand better that it's not just about Jewish communities in the world that are threatened, which is what Israel always kind of looked at, but to understand what we do with the thriving Jewish diaspora, as the United States, Canada always was, and how we want you to thrive and how we need to work on that together.
Thank you for leaving us off on that really important point. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope that you found this as edifying and enlightening as I did. We hope to be able to keep returning to Miri as there is more news, and we should only hear good news ahead. And wishing everyone, I think we're just at the tail end. I think I can still wish a Shana Tova. The year just began.
You can certainly do Gmar Chatima Tova. We're
Bar
still
Fatima
there.
Tova. And hopefully we can gather for more briefings about good news and positive steps ahead. So thank you all, and thank you, of course, to Miri.
Besimcha. Thank you so much, everybody. After Chagim Sameach.
After Chagim Sameach.